This program has been approved for one IDCEC CEU. To receive credit for this program, please submit your full name, IDCEC number, program class code, and your summary essay to CEU@IIDA.org. The program class code is located alongside the title of this program on the IIDA Academy page. For a certificate of completion to use toward another certifying body, please submit the same information to CEU@IIDA.org. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone to Believe in Better, a roundtable series that we're so excited about that the Mohawk group is generously partnering with IIDA. And today's topic, and this is our first one of these, Royce, and we are working toward balance and taking a look at environmental psychology, an incredibly fascinating deep dive. And I'm excited about this conversation.
Yeah, and I think we're going to really hone this discussion on the workplace, because the biggest thing that we are all discussing with our customers and our colleagues is what is post-COVID life going to look like when we go back into public space, when we go back to the office and workplace. No one can really predict what that's going to look like, and it's really up to all of us in the design industry to help everyone else figure out what that looks like, functions like, feels like. We're going to talk about a lot about how that feels. So I think we're going to have a great discussion.
Yeah, everybody's really turning to this industry for some clarity and some guidance on kind of what this next normal is going to look like. I feel like we've had so many phases that we've lived through since 368 days ago. And now with the advent of the vaccine, we've kind of moved into our next normal, and there will be another normal after that. I don't know that things will necessarily level out, but I think it is necessary for us as humans to seek some sort of equilibrium and balance, right?
Absolutely. I think the word normal is probably not the word we should use, because I feel like the past is done.
Yeah.
And we have to move forward, and we have to figure out how we move forward. And we'll probably salvage a lot of the behaviors we had in the past that were good, but it's also an opportunity to do better. And that's, our motto at Mohawk is believe in better. We're always, sort of pushing forward with new concepts and new technologies. And so the same applies to this year. It's like, how do we embrace this new era, thinking about new possibilities?
Well, let's make an executive decision, Royce, and let's just banish normal, because it's overrated anyway. So let's just banish normal.
I'm fine with that.
And Royce, we're so fortunate to be joined by 4 incredible panelists, and I'll start with introducing Kate Davis, who's Principal and Director of Corporate Interiors with HKS in Chicago. Hey, Kate. How are you? Good. And also Megan Dobstaff, who is a Senior Associate with Gensler in New York. Hey, Megan.
Hey there, everybody. How are you?
And I have the pleasure of introducing my very good friend, Mike Johnson II, who is a Senior Associate at Perkins & Will in Washington, D.C. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Royce. Hey, Cheryl.
Hey there.
Good to see you. And then I also have the pleasure of introducing our very special panelist, who is we call it an adjacent expert. So somebody who is not in the interior design profession, but who works in sort of a topic related to a lot of the things that we talk about with culture and things that of course affect design. So Adam Waits, who's PhD, and he's the Morris and Alice Kaplan Chair in Ethics and Decision Management, and also a professor of management and organization. Obviously I need to go back to school here, at Northwestern University in Chicago, Illinois. So welcome, Adam, and we're very excited to hear what all our panelists have to say, and of course what Adam's wisdom will be about psychology and sort of human ethics and human behavior, and how we are all going to tie this together with how we move forward in our design community.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Adam.
Thank you.
So let's jump right in. And for the panel, so we've all been working remotely, and the effect that it's had on our hearts and on our souls and on our brains. And, we talk about the infamous collusion of work life. I don't even know if I want to use the word balance, but I'd love to, in addition to asking each of you how you're doing and how you're maintaining, what are some of the tools that personally that you're using to maintain a healthy work-life balance? Who wants to start? Who wants to be that infamous jump in? I'm going to answer that question.
I'll jump in.
All right.
Okay.
Oh,
Great.
you want to flip a coin? We can flip a coin. You can
All
go
you,
in.
Megan.
All right. So I will say, well, I was laughing because I was like, I'm just so excited to be talking to people that I don't see every day on Zoom, right? It's truly, I'm like naturally smiling about that. So anyway, great to be here and chat with all of you. But so I'll say that as someone, I like to say that I've always had a work hard, play hard relationship with work. And I have always said that design does not work from 9 to 5. And creativity doesn't work from 9 to 5. It can't be scheduled, right? So the work-life balance thing has always been a little bit of a three-dimensional puzzle for me. But I used to have, I think, the office actually, like going to the office and coming home and having the separation of sort of church and state, if you will, was a tool I didn't really realize that I needed as much as I do, in fact, need it. So I was actually one of the people who, when the invite went out to say, okay, like, does anyone, want to start to come back to the office on sort of a phased basis? I was like first in line, because for me that the separation is something that I need. And so creating it for myself is a thing that I need to do as sort of a daily reminder. I have to remember that I'm in charge of doing that now, because I do not have the office doing that for me every day. So
yeah, it's a little bit of like forced compartmentalization.
yes,
Right?
yes,
Yeah.
Yep. So
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll jump in. It's so funny because when he first talked about this whole thing, you obviously thought that this is probably going to last a month. At least that's what I thought. I was like, there's no way that this is going to continue on as long as it did. But I mean, we're here now in year one, and it's been challenging. Megan said, about separating church and state. If you live in a one-bedroom place, your computer is your living room, is your office, is your kitchen, is everything. So there's a lot of dinging going on. There's a lot of noise, and you really do. Even though I probably worked just as hard and late during the pandemic, at least before the pandemic, at least when I got home, that was it.
yeah. It used to be a little bit more of a sanctuary.
Right, exactly.
Right? And now it's like,
there's an intrusion on our sanctuary, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I have to remind myself is to do the things that I used to do, even though I don't plan on going anywhere. Putting on a nice pair of pants as opposed to shorts, putting, the basic stuff, just brushing your hair, washing brushing your teeth, and doing all those things so that I am mentally prepared to do work when I start the day. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just being ready to go, because if I just roll out of bed and then I just come up to the computer, I'm not bringing all of myself to work when I'm there, and that can be a bad thing.
Yeah, great point, Mike.
Yeah.
And as we all like check pants here, because you actually said put on nice pair of pants. There you go. That's impressive. But you do. I mean, that the mental exercise of preparation it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kate?
Well, I was going to kind of tag on what Mike was saying, even though I, tried to keep up good habits, even as we started with this, because we didn't know how long it was going to be, if it was going to be a week or, now a year. And I think there's a moratorium on calling something normal or abnormal. And I think the year is the the call, right? So, but what I noticed was I'm someone who wears a little bit of perfume every day when I go to the office, and I had not gone that far in my preparations working from home. And the first really big client presentation that I had to do working from home, I remembered to put on perfume, and it completely changed my mindset. There was something about scent for me more than some of the other tactile things that really brought me into, oh, I'm at work. This is serious today. I better bring my A game. And so that was a big thing. I've actually really enjoyed this time. My team is really distributed geographically. So I never really sat with them before. I sat with a much smaller subset of them. So this has been a good reminder to me to be more intentional as I move forward, and to not kind of fall into the bad habits that I was just subscribing to, because presence was paramount, but not intentional.
So that's perfect, Kate. Thank you. So Adam, so those cues that, pants for Mike, perfume for Kate, boundaries for Megan, how crucial and critical are those cues for us in kind of this in-between period, right? And I think Mike even alluded to it, at the beginning of this, we thought there was some finiteness to this work from home moment, that we'll do this for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then it continued to drag. So without having any kind of definitive end, how important are those cues for us to maintain balance?
Yeah. So all of the examples given remind me of the importance of rituals. And there's a lot of recent psychology research on the importance of rituals. And during the pandemic, we've started to realize something as simple as a commute can serve as an important ritual. Like, typically, people don't like their commute. There's a big literature on happiness, and one of the least happy making experiences people have is on the commute. But I think in recent years, and with the advent of podcasts and all the different things you can do during the commute, it becomes a way of separating work self from home self, both on the forward end and the backward end. And some friends of mine, some researchers at other schools, have actually done some work with frontline essential workers who have had to go into work throughout the pandemic. These are corrections officers and nurses. And these field experiments actually force these people, well, not force them, but ask them to perform a little ritual at the end of the day after work, something as simple as washing their hands. And those simple little rituals, like the perfume example as well, turn out to be really important for increasing well-being and reducing burnout. And if you're a work from home person, the implication is that maybe you can figure out how to do some of those rituals when you're going from work mode to home mode, or home mode to work mode, even if the environment is the same.
Yeah, perfect. Note to self, have a ritual. So we're all, right, we're all part of teams. We're all incredibly collaborative people. This is a very collaborative industry. So as we continue to work virtually, what have you been doing to kind of surmount the challenges around communication and teamwork, and helping your team feel part of a team? What are you doing to kind of increase that sticky, fuzzy teaminess that happens amongst all of us, really?
Easy.
Any pro tips?
Turn on your camera.
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest tip. I mean, I have multiple meetings a day, and there are some times where I'm the only one with the camera on, and there are some times where I have the camera on and other people feel the need to turn theirs on as well. And I'm encouraging people to interact with each other, because the sound of my voice doesn't necessarily always express, my excitement or me trying to describe something, and, use my hands to say, just shift it like this a little bit. Things like that really kind of help me connect with the people that I work with. And I think that that's really valuable and really important too, because, and it shows that you're present and that you are paying attention, and that you're not, doing the digital prayer and you're just, on your phone the whole time. So that's my big tip.
I jotted that down too. I was part of when we worked from home. We were testing out at Gensler, like, okay, this group's gonna work from home, right? This studio is gonna work from home, and we went home on a Thursday, and then we never went back. It was like, and then and then we were like, wait, my plants, like I didn't get my plants, right? I thought I was coming back on Monday. But one of the first things that we kind of like issued out to everyone was the importance of turning on your camera, of that was kind of going to be an expectation. It's like for all of our team meetings, and I really think, again, yeah, exactly, like I like sometimes too expressive, right? But it's like that's how that people are excited and or very serious, and or you really I think you visually tell a lot by reading someone's body language. And I think to tack on to that too, I think we are all in front of screens the whole time now, and it's I get, like, we all do it, but the multitasking thing, I think, Cheryl, you use the word fuzziness. I talk about the multitasker fuzziness that now exists when you're like, no, we totally talked about this. Like, what were you doing? Right. And it's like, and I'm guilty of that too, right? It's like we're trying to fit in so many things because we are in these back to back. So that's been a challenge, which again, it's about setting personal boundaries. So I just try to be present when I am, interacting with people and making sure that I'm giving them my time and attention. So some days that's easier than others, but.
Texting while Zooming, it's the #1 parallel processing activity that we all engage in.
Yeah.
Royce?
Yeah.
Royce, I saw you.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, when Mike and Megan were talking, it reminded me of something, Cheryl, that we talk about quite a bit, which is that I feel like Zoom has allowed a new kind of intimacy to happen in the digital age that I didn't feel before COVID. Like, for example, you might go to a big meeting in person with like 30 people in a big multi-purpose room, and you're seeing the backs of people's heads and not necessarily looking at people face to face. And I think now when you're on Zoom, you can actually see, if everyone is on camera, can actually see everybody's face, and you can have a face-to-face, eye-to-eye conversation. Recently I had a meeting for a volunteer thing that I do, and there were 30 people on the call, and I only recognized like 3 of the people, and I'm like, who are all these other people? Like, and obviously I'd seen them in person, but I didn't remember them because we didn't interact face to face, and I just saw the back of their head, in the past meetings. So I think there is this new level of intimacy that, plus we're also looking into each other's homes. I can see what's on your bookshelf, and you can see I have guitars behind me, and we can learn a little about each other's private lives. And I think that helps sort of increase the connection between people, even if you don't know each other. And I've been really surprised how many new friends I've made this year on Zoom that I've never met in real life, because you have that immediate connection and that immediate sort of intimacy.
Yeah.
I agree. There's been a lot of things that I think have run their course this year, the Zoom happy hours and some things like that. Something we started with our team to gain more connection and a deeper understanding of each other is we started a email string that would tell me about your coworkers. And so, because I think we went from that expectation that, you controlled your environment, you controlled the interruptions, you controlled the level of noise in your workspace, or could go to a place. And here it's like, everybody's seen my dog come in, freaked out about the Amazon delivery, my kids interrupting during their school day. And so we started this little string that just was sharing these really funny moments and pictures of things that were happening kind of off camera. Like my coworkers have been laying in front of the fire all day, not doing anything. This and that, and kind of also started a recipe exchange, which actually proved to be really helpful and really gave us more insight into one another. So it was a couple funny little things that occurred, and I didn't expect the outcome.
I love that. Hey, Adam, real quick question for you. So we are all people who love eye contact and being in kind of this immediate moment with one another. Does eye contact via Zoom, is it as valuable as real eye contact? Does it weigh the same? Is it as meaningful to our brains as face-to-face eye contact?
I mean, My kind of general experience of the pandemic is I've been surprised at how little technological innovation there's been over the year. You know, I expected, you know, maybe Silicon Valley would come up with all sorts of clever ways to distribute the vaccine and make better masks and develop faster testing. And it turns out the biggest contribution has been Zoom, which you know, does offer us kind of the best alternative to face-to-face interaction. But what's interesting, I was talking to Royce about this in a previous conversation, is there's been a lot of recent work trying to look at how much engagement do you get out of verbal communication, like an email, versus voice communication versus voice plus video. And that it turns out the added benefit of voice plus video doesn't do so much to humanize the other person. I would have thought, based on all the research on the importance of eye contact and face processing, and infants, it's one of the first things they learn, how to process a human face, that video would be so important. But it turns out that the big jump from communicating over text is getting on the phone. The power of the human voice to kind of create the sense that there's a real human being on the other end who has an intelligent mind, who's really engaging with me, seems to be almost just as good as Zoom. And I've actually tried to, as you know, we're all kind of burning out from Zoom, I've tried to shift as many of my meetings to the phone as possible.
Yeah, going old school with just a phone call. Yeah.
Right.
Adam, do you think that's because we hear our mothers and our fathers' voices before we enter the world?
That's interesting. I think, I don't know. I actually think it's more something we learn, that a voice is kind of a cue to a mind. And so I do a lot of research on human machine interaction and how humans process robots and what's the optimal level of anthropomorphism. And I've done work on the self-driving car. And we found that adding kind of minimally human features to technology, like a voice, increases trust and responsiveness. And there's just something about the human voice that's a real cue to, there's a thoughtful, present agent here. And I don't know where that comes from. Certainly, you know, yeah, it is something we process before we're even out of the womb, but it turns out to be very critical in engagement, even more so than the face, which is, you know, what I would have predicted. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, I'm going to toss out the next question, which is, how can we use this time to reconsider work relationships and potentially improve them? So what has this time and experience during COVID taught us about our established norm of workplace experience? So how can we reconsider our work relationships? What have we learned during this time about our teams and the people we work with? And maybe what are some of the good things we'll take forward? And maybe what are some of the bad practices we might leave behind?
I think, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, okay, have at it.
I was just going to say, we've been talking a lot about, back to that word I used earlier, which is intentional communication. We jumped into Microsoft Teams, you know, with both feet as things ramped up as we went home. And we noticed that there was just so much traffic. There's been Teams fatigue, there was email fatigue, there's Zoom fatigue. And so we really have tried to encourage people to be more intentional in their communication and not just kind of blow it out there all the time. So really putting those pieces into place around, don't send an email to me at 10 o'clock at night, put the delay on it, have it show up in my inbox first thing in the morning. Like helping people to establish guardrails and helping them to take a minute to breathe and think and say, what am I trying to say? How am I trying to communicate it? And what's the best platform to do that?
Yeah, I love that word, intentional. And I think you can apply that to really everything in our lives, right? To make the most of the time that we have in our day. How about you, Megan? What do you think is going to sort of, you know, move forward with you when you get back to the office and work with your teams again? And what kind of bad habits are we going to leave behind?
Oh gosh, and bad habits are so hard to break, right? You know, I think something we learned early on that was, I think I was really surprised by it and kind of, yeah, I was like, oh, wow, was that, you know, we Gensler has an entire research institute, so we love research and we love assessing ourselves. And so we, very early on, and we've done a couple of them, employee surveys, but, one thing that was discovered was that a lot of, the younger generation, I'm always like, am I a millennial? I can't ever remember, but anyway, they actually were, felt that they were thriving in, a work from home scenario. And we actually saw productivity go up in certain people. And that was like, oh my goodness, wow. Like, cause I'm someone who I like I said before, right? I thrive when I'm around people and that all of our energies are sort of connecting. And, I think that point made me realize that probably my kinetic energy might be a little bit too much for people sometimes, but just this idea, I think that we're going to have to meet people where they're at is, I think, really important. We've, again, we do been doing a lot of work with our clients where we're doing surveys of of their employees and their organizations. And one of the big discussions that has come up is we've had some leadership teams say, all right, well, I can't wait to go back like 5 days a week, and we're like, okay, well, if you look at your survey data, actually like 75% of your employees say they want to come back 2 to 3 days a week. And if you're there 5 days a week from like 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., like there is going to be this sort of peer pressure, if you will, right, to sort of do what leadership is doing and in order to be mentored and get ahead and do all those things. So I think it's going to be, I think just really meeting people where they're at is going to be something that we're all going to have to, I think, be very aware of and work out the kinks as we sort of move through the not new normal, but the impending horizon. I don't know what we're going to call it, but
I like that, the impending horizon. That's great.
Yeah,
You coined it here first. I love it.
Yeah, heard here first. Yeah. So.
And how about you, Mike? How do you see this happening?
I mean, so here's the thing is that, I'm going to echo what Kate and Megan said. Like what Kate said about intentional, I think that's very good. The email late at night, I try to delay my emails as well, because just like Megan was saying, that someone who's a younger designer then who is in a 1-bedroom apartment and is getting this dinging and all the noise that are associated with it, they feel this urge or need to then answer that email at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and therefore is stressing them out. So one of the things I'm trying to do is kind of intentionally, avoid that stress. And also at the same time, one of the good habits that I've been doing now is not do back-to-back meetings. At least give somebody 15 minutes before you schedule another meeting back behind them, because I feel I get meeting invites all the time and they're all stacked up against each other. And before you know it, you want a cup of coffee, you want to take a walk, or you want to, go to the bathroom for, so those are some of the things that I think that I will take with me. I will say that, to Kate's intentional part, when it comes to design, there are just some unintentional meetings that I just need to have in order to just process a lot of the creative things, even if it's just to just talk about or noodle about something for 30 minutes. It might not be to say we're going to focus on this or that. Like I just need that bouncing back and forth, like Megan was talking about, that creative thing, so that it happens naturally and it's not forced. So it all depends on what the meeting is about and what you're trying to achieve from it. I think that that's kind of how I try to treat some of those meetings.
Yeah, talking about this idea of like the endless day, I was having a conversation with someone from IA and they brought up the notion of bookends. Like back in, before COVID, we had these rituals that were a little bit more built into our day. So we knew what, like the commute would be the beginning of your ritual and of course your return commute home, but maybe it's that happy hour cocktail, or maybe it's that walk with your dog at the end of the day, where, you have these certain rituals that are built into your workday. So you have the time like ramping up and then you have the time ramping down where you can get back to sort of that net zero of your normal self at home, right? So maybe this is a good question for Adam, like, what are some good suggestions, as we're in this sort of, interim time and everybody's trying to figure out like what that new next normal is going to be, how can we think about, as we do move back to workplace, whether, designers in their offices are moving in, but also their clients are moving in, how can we define some new rituals and bookends that really might be productive in whatever post-COVID world looks like?
Yeah, so all of the discussion about, what good habits are we going to take forward and what bad habits are we going to keep reminded me of something that I think was a problem pre-COVID, which was this idea of the 24/7 workplace, that you're always working. And this is a topic that really became top of mind for me after a friend of mine took me on a tour of the Facebook campus in Menlo Park, and they have all these amenities and physical therapy and a wood shop on campus and cafeteria, everything. And it's like that's sort of the template for Silicon Valley workplace, and then gets infused into all other industries. And implicitly, what that does is it just keeps you at work. And then we have, so one, workplaces are building more spaces to kind of mix leisure and work, and that becomes confusing. And then outside of work, you're expected to be on all the time. And then when COVID hit, I felt like the experience is even more so, we can get to you at any time, right? So Mike is talking about the 9:30, 10 p.m. email or text or whatever. I think that was already a problem, and it's become increasingly a problem. And I do think it's not a good thing, because we're already seeing, record levels of burnout. And so when you ask me, what would I recommend going forward, it's boundaries. So we started talking about rituals. Related to that is just boundaries. And it's really not even letting people go off the clock, it's forcing people to go off the clock. So I think about all these companies that have policies like unlimited vacation, unlimited PTO, don't email after work hours. The best companies are those that actually force you. In South Korea and France, there are laws that turn off work computers at Friday at 5 p.m. Or France has a right, that's South Korea, France has a right to disconnect law, where you are like prohibited from answering work emails after work hours. Companies sometimes pay their employees to take vacation on which they cannot respond to work emails. So it's more taking time off seriously once we come back, because we've over-rotated to the point where everyone's sort of working, sort of not all the time, and that isn't healthy.
That's great. Adam, I love hearing that. I just announced to my team at IIDA headquarters today, we're instituting the IIDA summer vacation. Everybody's got PTO and they're not using it, but I'm putting in a mandatory week in July where everybody's going to go on vacation or do whatever they do or catch up on your doctor's appointments, but there will be no work. So thank you for validating that for me. Let's talk a little bit about, this moment, all that has been revelatory in this moment and all that we've learned. There's been a lot of understanding how human we are and understanding our humanity, but there've been moments that have been dehumanizing as well. How are we letting humanity win during this period? What again, these are pro tips from you all, but how are we letting our humanity win during this period? And how will that carry over to, as Megan said, the impending horizon? I'm using it. I'll credit you for it every time I say it, Megan, but I'm loving the impending horizon.
No need. Gifted to the world.
What's going to keep us human?
Oh gosh. I mean, I really think and from the beginning, I kind of was like, we all are going to go back in some way to interacting with each other. And I hope that, I've always believed that's what it is. It's, your familiar relationships, it's your friends, it's your work family, who for a lot of us, especially in this industry, our work family, they're our best friends, you know. And I think even when it has been a Zoom that's just a one-on-one conversation that's not about work, they've been so meaningful, because you're like, how are you doing, right? And you're connecting with people, and the, you know, close, you know, we all have our little circles that we've, you know, kept close, you know, the couple friends that you hang out with, and those friendships have become so important to keep in, like, you know, the emotional equilibrium on a somewhat, yeah, you know, medial, you know, basis. But I think, you know, I went, I had to go on a site tour, it was like 2 months ago. And so we did like a big, like, okay, everyone's going to be safe and right. And we did, it was, you know, but a contractor walked in who I hadn't seen for like 3 years, because we built out a project, like, you know, 3 years ago together. And he walked in and he was like, Megan Dobstaff. And like, I was like, Stu. And it was just, I like teared up a little, because I was like, this is this is how we build things together, right? Together. And so I hope for our industry that it will be the relationships and the people are going to be the thing that bring people back as much as possible. And like Kate, like you were saying, for teams that are sort of transatlantic and Pacific and everything, I think hopefully this whole experience will also teach us that getting on camera and making sure that we are bringing those people into a room and they're not just on a phone, like listening, driving down a highway, right, somewhere. It's like, we need to make I think, concerted effort to be together in all the ways that we can be moving forward. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, and I love that vocal moment, right? You weren't a tag on Zoom, a name tag on Zoom, like he shouted your name. That's, you know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's what we should start doing now, is just shouting our names when we walk
whenever you
into
get
a
on
Zoom
Zoom,
meeting, you know?
Mike Johnson, Kate Davis. I know.
And then it'll feel more genuine, right?
Right?
truly. Yeah. So,
I mean, I to tack on to that, it's just one thing that humanistic part is those accidental interactions with people that I truly miss. There are people that I probably haven't spoken to all year at my office because I don't work directly with them, but I would have normally seen them on a daily basis to say hi, or, you know, what are you doing this weekend? You know, sit down and just have lunch and just speak with people that I wouldn't normally speak with. So those accidental interactions are the kind of the personality that work has, that you kind of miss out on. And you know, I've spoken to a couple people in my office and I'm just like, man, I haven't heard from you in so long. And I have to remind myself, you know, maybe I should call in and check on that person and see how they're doing, even though I don't work directly with them, just to make sure that things are okay. Because like Megan said, when it comes down to it, it's those moments, that human just telling a story back and forth to each other about simple things, that can go a long way with just checking in on someone.
Yeah, that those serendipitous moments, and I think, Mike, you used the word, like, you miss that noodling with other people, but just that, you know, I think prior to COVID, maybe that moment when we'd ask people, how are you? It became kind of a toss-off question. We never really listened to the answer, but that question, how are you? And then hearing that response, like, to me, that's humanity right there. Asking that question meaningfully and then taking that moment to hear what people are telling you. I think that's good for the soul. Adam, what are some other tips about things that'll keep us human?
Well, this idea of humanization and dehumanization is a core topic that I've been studying. When I think about what do I mean, using kind of research terms, it means the recognition of another person as having an inner mental life. Like, if I'm just observing your behavior and thinking of you as my panel partner or work partner or whatever, that's not really getting at what are your thoughts, your hopes, your wishes, your dreams, your desires, your feelings, your emotions, and things like that. And so, you know, I think circling back to something Kate might have brought up about where you get the benefits of Zoom, although I'm increasingly finding those benefits to be few and far between. I gave a talk to a group at Penn State University. This is what I do for my job. We teach, we do research, we give colloquy at other universities, and a friend of mine hosted the talk. And at the end, he, you know, wanted to say thanks. And his daughter, his toddler daughter, just kept interrupting and bursting into tears, you know, and he was so embarrassed, but everyone on the call, I loved it. I mean, this is like the best talk, because nothing that we do is that important, right? Our work is, you know, that's the big lesson from this year. Nothing that any of us do is that important. And you kind of try to simulate the formalities of having a colloquium talk and having a discussion. And then this, you know, this girl, poor girl, starts crying like that. I all of a sudden see, you know, his embarrassment and sadness, and he's a good dad. And that exposes his inner mental life. And I'm like, oh, this guy I knew as kind of a colleague for years and years. You see into his home, and all of a sudden, wow, that's a human being. Now, that's also mixing business with non-business, which not all of us like. And so just getting back to the very initial question, I think the real ways that we could bring more humanity to this moment where we're all separated by screens is more like getting at something Mike was talking about. It's that experience of the first few weeks of COVID where we were reaching out to people we hadn't talked to in years. I have a colleague who calls those relationships dormant ties. You know, in the language of social networks, we have our weak ties, who are people we kind of know. We have our strong ties, our close friends and family, and then we have these dormant ties. The reaching out to those people is, we always, the research says we underestimate the value of doing that. And that was something the pandemic forced us to do. And then, you know, without getting too long-winded here, the other part of that first few week experience that kind of created this shared humanity is we really were all in something together. We had a shared reality. When we go back to everything opening up, then we fraction into our normal routine. I mean, actually, to be honest, that happened about 6 weeks after whatever, the NBA shut down. All of a sudden, people kind of started going back to virtual work. But for 6 weeks, we were all in a state of uncertainty, and work had sort of paused. And that as well, reminding us of what do we have in common while we're dealing with this shared crisis. You know, we got about 6 weeks of that. So is there a way to bring that back? I'm not sure. Obviously, we don't want to do it through a catastrophe, but through something a little bit more positive.
Right. That's great. That's fantastic, Adam. Thank you for that. Well, we're about to engage in some shared reality. And let me ask Team IIDA. You see, we've got a post up here about our breakout room discussion. So we're all going to take a moment to talk in small groups. All right, we're going to do some group share outs. So how about some group moderators? Share with what you talked about with your group.
Hi there, team. Well, do we want to kick it off?
You go for it. You go for it, Linda.
Well, I know that Ashley was our scribe for our meeting. So Ashley, I don't know if you want to jump in and share some of the thoughts and notes that you taken.
Sure. So when we were chatting, I think most of us are excited to get back. I think we also acknowledge that quite a few of us are from different states, and you know, some people that might be in Georgia feel like they've been doing it all along, especially from a more rural area. And then people like Lois and I are in Massachusetts, and I was noting I still have to wear a mask to get into my multi-family elevator or hallway. So just acknowledging that we're all in somewhat of a we're living slightly different pandemic, and excited to get back, but also just being aware that there may be different challenges to get back, and it most likely will be a new normal, and understanding those complexities, but also being aware of everybody's comfortabilities and just trying to get to that new normal. But we are all generally pretty excited to get back and have that connection in person.
Yeah.
So I'll go. So our group was talking about how, I guess Ken Wilson was talking about specifically how design is contagious. We knew he didn't mean like as COVID contagious, but as far as inspiring you to create other good design. And also, there was conversation about how you run into people that you work with, and those accidental interactions, help inspire you and understand what others are working on. There was also some comments about how some of, just like I think is often part of a conversation, how many good things have come out of this that we're hoping to keep, how easy it is to pull people from all across the country in on a meeting really quickly, or how things can scale really well. We also talked about, how the culture of the workspace, like that's going to become even more important, and, making people feel part of a community and enticing people to come to those offices. And there was also a good comment about how we're going to have a much higher level of intelligence built into the space, to kind of accommodate. Some people are going to want to work from home. Some people are going to want to work in the office more, and helping those two groups of people understand each other.
Yeah, that's a great point. And understanding the equity in those two groups. Like no one should feel less than being in the office or less than when they're working remotely. So that the equity piece will be critical in managing that. That was great. Another group?
Hi, I'm Laura. Our group mostly focused on kind of the first question, and we talked about how this experience will kind of lead us to curate our experiences a little bit more, particularly as we enter that stage where some of us are vaccinated, some people are still wearing masks and have like various levels of comfort and what that can look like. So on that note, we all kind of said that we are pretty cautious folks. So we're excited, but we're also like nervous to have that hug, to be close to strangers, but we're also, grateful that we can go out in public wearing masks and like maybe ask somebody to don't talk so close, and excited for the freedom to be a little bit more nervous about that stuff than, we probably already were. But just kind of approaching the next step with like empathy for people's diversity of comfort, diversity of need for space. Mm-hmm. And just the probably likely need to take time to recharge as we begin to re-socialize, and our brains aren't really wired for it as much as they were like a year ago. Kind of taking the time to still focus on yourself and on your well-being as well.
Yeah. And it won't be like flipping a switch, right? It's, you go from here to there. There'll be a little bit of lag time and a little bit of reorientation, right? A little bit of re-entry.
Yep.
Yeah. Nice. Who else?
I'll go, Cheryl.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Ashley.
Yeah. So we had some interesting conversations about the at-home dynamic versus the work dynamic. We're talked a lot about missing our work family and, what that's going to be like. And, some of us said that the pros of working at home were actually really great because you had things that you could never have before, like being able to cook your lunch every day was really great, or saying, hey, I need like a 15-minute break. I'm just going to like put on a little TV and just kind of unwind for a second and get back into it. And, but also appreciating the commute from the home to the office, which is something we always kind of dreaded, but now having that time to kind of think through that process of like, how was our day? What actually happened? And kind of like go through that. And it seems like a lot of the lines of clarity are really blurred, right? Like it's all kind of coming together in a different way. But, someone else said that there was 10%, they were 10% more productive by not commuting. And so that time not commuting was actually really nice because it felt more efficient. and you feel better about that. And it's a good balance, you know, when you can do a meeting successfully at home and at the office, like finding when it's appropriate to go to the office and when it's appropriate to work from home, right? If you want to have those meetings at home, you know, if you want to go into the office because you have to touch something, because you have to be there, and being mindful of your day and what that actually looks like. If you can have a Zoom meeting, you know, have the Zoom meeting, right? And stay home and work and really focus on being intentional that day. So, you know, and I think it was just kind of a lot of us missing each other, right?
Oh yeah, there will be, right? It'll be like one big reunion, I think, for a lot of people when they get back. And your piece about the commute is very true. I mean, you know, you take whatever your commute was and multiply that for how long we've been out of the office, you know, give or take, we've all got about 1 million hours back in our lives. And, you know, and we will be loath, I think, some of us, to give up a lot of that time. So balancing when and how often we'll commute will be critical. Let's see, who else is out there? Verda, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I took notes for my group, and we
you
were
go.
only able to go around one time and answer the question of what is going back to public life and public spaces mean to you? And so Meta started with saying, you know, we belong to a tribe and we need that connection and that community, and she misses the inspiration. And she said she also misses being an observer, which got us all saying how much we all miss people watching, like truly people watching.
Absolutely.
Then Ross was saying that he misses his clients, his coworkers. He misses ritual, and it's hard to get that on Zoom. And Royce chimed in, yes, ritual. Or actually, he misses connectivity. Sorry, and Royce misses ritual. But she did acknowledge that she's felt a lot healthier during this pandemic, and she wants to figure out how to keep that balance. And I talked about the physical, that I'm excited to get back and experience our physical connection from here down that we haven't been able to. And just when you're in a room with other people, you interact with your bodies as much as with your words. And so I miss that. And then Daniel poetically said that he misses the freedom to love one another, as truly love one another and share our suffering and pain.
Poetic. Daniel is always poetic. Thank you for that. Perfect. Did we get all the groups?
I'll go.
I'm sorry, Renee.
So,
go ahead.
That's all right. For our group, we kind of touched on a lot of what everybody's already mentioned, but I think everybody's interested in a hybrid solution, that we've created these sanctuaries at home that we love, and we love to cocoon in them, but we're ready for some change to get out. And some of the quiet moments and things that we've done for ourselves, we don't want to lose. We want to continue with those because they're helpful. And that some of us are feeling a little anxious. You know, most of us are in Chicago or Minneapolis, where we've been on lockdown. To get back out there is, you know, a little stressful maybe, and how to come up with a plan to do that. So maybe the hybrid thing is a slower reentry, that it's not just jumping in to the deep end and creating all kinds of anxiousness. And also gave an example where there was a meeting and it was all on Zoom, and finishes were selecting, and it just wasn't going well on a project. And there was a little anxiousness to meet in person, but once they did, the meeting went great. They connected in person. They went back to Zoom. It didn't work out very well. So I think, you know, we're realizing that everything works virtually, and the in-person thing is, we're going to move there. And, you know, I had said it's kind of like riding a bike. You don't forget, you do it a few more times, and we're all going to be right back into it, just like we used to be.
Nice, nicely done. And again, that re-entry moment, we were all rather dumped precipitously in this situation, which means we're going to have to be mindful of how we come out of it. So thank you for that, Renee. I think we touched on all of the group.
I have a few comments that I could share.
Oh, great, Jeanette, thank you.
Similar to what everyone else was saying, there is a sense of feeling kind of cautious and a little apprehensive, especially in areas actually that were maybe more opened up, that maybe people feel like people aren't taking the measures that they would like to see them take. But our group had a couple interesting things, which is actually now that they've been home, there was a comment that they actually have a little anxiety now. They're kind of nestled in with their home family and have their work routine around their home family. There might be a little bit of anxiety about leaving their home family to go back into the office. But then the biggest thing for us in our industry is one of the biggest obstacles of working from home is, of course, is the samples. Like you can't have your samples with you and everything. So a number of people mentioned that that's an obstacle and an incentive to go back into the office, like was mentioned before.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that add-on. Well, I'm going to be mindful of time. It's just Central Time. It's about 3:25 or so. I want to thank all of the panelists for the great conversation, all of you for joining and participating. And Adam, I'm going to put you a little bit on the square spot and ask you to contribute some thoughts about how we are in this moment, how we get through it, how we re-enter into the impending horizon to wrap us up.
Well, I think, that's a
lot.
Yeah. I think one thing that people always underestimate is our ability to rationalize everything and rationalize terrible experiences. And I think we will surprise ourselves by how much we revert to just trying to feel like this never happened, actually. So there's, this is one of the most robust findings in the whole psychological literature, that we overestimate how negative bad experiences will make us feel, because we underestimate the power of our psychological immune system to basically rationalize those things away. So the good news is, I think reentry will be much easier than we imagine. The bad news is we're very good at sort of forgetting about and kind of psychologically pushing away mass death, mass tragedy, mass inequities. And, it's probably important to, it's like, look how easily we've been able to just kind of pigeonhole 500,000 plus deaths and already. And so it's probably somewhat important. I think people unconsciously are just dying to kind of get back to whatever they felt like was the way things were before, and we'll be able to do so fairly readily through kind of following our old psychological scripts. And so it's probably, more the work we have to do is not forget that something did happen. Several important things did happen, and to keep that in mind, and not just to act like, okay, we're back. So that's my closing reflection.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. A big thank you to Royce and Mohawk for this discussion. And I think, Royce, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. I too want to thank you, Cheryl, for moderating, Adam for joining us, our esteemed panel. It's so great to work with you guys. And thank you all guests for coming. And a special shout out to our Mohawk team who helped lead our breakout rooms. I hope everybody feels a little bit more inspired to walk into, wait, Megan, I'm looking up your term here.
The impending horizon.
Impending horizon. We're going to end on that because I think that's such a great way to think about what's coming next.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody keep your eye on that horizon and stay strong, stay safe, stay well. We'll see you soon. Cheers, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.